Within the following quotation from Adam Smith, the credit given in the books of the bank is the same thing as bank money. I quote from Wealth of Nations, Book 4, Chapter 3, Digression. In order to facilitate the trade in bullion, the bank has been, for these many years, in the practice of giving credit in its books on deposits of gold and silver bullion. This credit is generally about 5% below the mint price of such bullion. The bank grants, at the same time, what is called a recipice, or receipt, entitling the person who makes the deposit, or the bearer, to take out the bullion again at any time within 6 months upon transferring to the bank a quantity of bank money equal to that for which credit had been given in its books when the deposit was made, and upon paying 1/4% for the keeping if the deposit was in silver, and 1/2% if it was in gold, but at the same time declaring that in default of such payment, and upon the expiration of this term, the deposit should belong to the bank at the price at which it had been received, or for which credit had been given in the transfer books. What is thus paid for the keeping of the deposit may be considered as a sort of warehouse rent, and why this warehouse rent should be so much dearer for gold than for silver, several different reasons have been assigned. The fineness of gold, it has been said, is more difficult to be ascertained than that of silver. Frauds are more easily practiced, and occasion a greater loss in the most precious metal. Silver, besides, being the standard metal, the state, it has been said, wishes to encourage more the making of deposits of silver than those of gold. End quotation. So if I, as a trader, come along to the bank with my bullion, we know that the mint price of bullion is between 2 to 3% higher than the market price of bullion. And the bank price of money is 5% lower than the mint price of bullion typically. Recall that the bank price of money being 5% lower than the price of minted bullion, I will receive a denominated worth in bank credits which is 5% lower than the denominated worth of my minted bullion. So let's say that I, as a merchant, came along to the bank with my £100 worth of bullion. I would receive between 102 and 103 bank credits for my £100 deposited in bullion. Let's say I do business with another merchant and pay him or her £20 of my bank credit. Assuming I was initially awarded £102 of bank credit, I now have £82 of bank credit in my account. I can either withdraw my £82 bank credit via a receipt for £82 bank credit, which I will buy after selling my receipt for £102 bank credit, or I can acquire £20 of bank credit in order to bring my tally up to £102 bank credit in order to withdraw this £102 bank credit with my original receipt. Within the same section, Adam Smith wrote, "The owners of bank credits and the holders of receipts constitute two different sorts of creditors against the bank. The holder of a receipt cannot draw out the bullion for which it is granted without reassigning to the bank a sum of bank money equal to the price at which the bullion had been received. If he has no bank money of his own, he must purchase it of those who have it. The owner of bank money cannot draw out bullion without producing to the bank receipts for the quantity which he wants. If he has none of his own, he must buy them of those who have them." End quote. Just say Walter deposits the equivalent of 1,000 guilders mint price of bullion within the Bank of Amsterdam. He will receive bank credit of 1,050 guilders because the bank price is 5% lower than the mint price, and as the bank price is lower, we will have a greater amount of guilders denominated than we will have by the mint price of bullion. Smith wrote, "The price of the receipt and the price of the bank money compound or make up between them full value or price of the bullion." If Walter does wish to withdraw his 82 guilders and convert it into bullion, then the bank credits will cease to exist within the bank ledgers as the bullion becomes withdrawn. Walter has 6 months in order to reclaim his bullion from the bank. If he wishes to store his bullion within the bank for a further 6 months, he must pay the warehouse rent for the first 6 months. If he defaults on this payment, then the bank will never return the bullion, and in lieu of this restoration, there will be indefinitely a certain number of bank credits kept within the ledgers of the bank as to be exchanged between merchants. Recall that Adam Smith said, quote, "What is thus paid for the keeping of the deposit may be considered as a sort of warehouse rent." End quote. Adam Smith wrote, "A receipt for bullion is almost always worth something, and it very seldom happens, therefore, that anybody suffers his receipts to expire, or allows his bullion to fall to the bank at the price at which it had been received, either by not taking it out before the end of the 6 months, or by neglecting to pay 1/4 or 1/2% in order to obtain a new receipt for another 6 months. This, however, though it happens seldom, is said to happen sometimes, and more frequently with regard to gold than with regard to silver, on account of the higher warehouse rent which is paid for the keeping of the more precious metal. End quote. But was the price of bullion constant? Was the market price of it static or fluctuating? Well, goods are often paid for in bullion because it is a commodity which is highly portable, highly durable, lasts indefinitely, and is valuable in exchange. What about the market price of bank money? Was this static, or did it fluctuate? Well, the demand for bank money was whatever confluence trading merchants may have had for bank money in conjunction with that which they may have had for bullion when making purchases and selling items. If and when the bank price of money falls, more can be had in exchange by a fixed amount of bullion, which is the same as saying less bullion can be had in exchange by a fixed amount of bank money. Merchants would be enticed to deposit bullion toward within the bank, and this would remove bullion from within private people's hands. If the bank price of money rises, then less bank money could be had for a fixed amount of bullion, which is the same as saying more bullion could be had for a fixed amount of bank credits. Merchants would be enticed to withdraw bullion from the bank. If the market price of bullion would fall, then a greater amount of bullion would exchange by a fixed amount of bank credits, which is the same as saying fewer bank credits could be had for a fixed amount of bullion. In this case, merchants would be enticed to withdraw bullion from the bank. If the price of bullion would rise, then a lesser amount of bullion would exchange by a fixed number of bank credits, or, which is the same thing, a greater number of bank credits could be had for a fixed amount of bullion. Merchants would be tempted to deposit bullion, thus removing this bullion from immediate availability to private persons. This bullion gravitates to wherever industry is. Industry is the intensive and intelligent performance of human labour. Capital is required for any enterprise of an industrious nature. Money gravitates towards the intelligent performance of human labour, like water flows downhill. It is a fundamental postulate, often disputed, because in the alternative, money can be used as a device of social control, whereby employment of people is controlled by macroscopic spending by the state, and thus people chase money rather than money gravitating towards a certain type of human behavior.